never-ending game. Talk about luck. He thought it would be fun to give the game a try and opted for Hell mode as the difficulty level. On that day, the guy just vanished from Earth. So there was this guy, right? He was a single 35-year-old salaryman just doing his thing. But then, get this, he goes and reincarnates as a baby named Alan. Can you believe it? It's been 5 years already, and his new status after reincarnating is serf. Serf couldn't have another job, and he wasn't allowed to leave the village. On a scorching day, he offered his assistance to his mother, only to be turned down as she encouraged him to go outside and have some fun. As his mother showered him with compliments for his kindness, his mind wandered back to the days when he would play pretend as a child. He didn't want to freak out his family in that world, so he kept his reincarnation a secret. Summoning involves conjuring creatures from cards using magical abilities. The plan was to find a buddy to help out in the battle, but it looked like he wasn't quite ready to take on those mystical creatures in that realm. He just really wanted to go toe-to-toe with that beast. So his main goal right now was to get the beast's blessing. He can level up his status by using the beast's blessing with those 20 card holders. And just like that, his physical strength was now on par with that of the average adult. Controlling one's status meant controlling the game, according to his beliefs. However, he considered strength to be valuable for the time being. The afternoon bell started to ring, and his friend Krina called him to play some games together. Krina was his sparring partner, and she also couldn't go on hunting for magical beasts. They started to play, and it was too embarrassing for a former 35-year-old man. And it wasn't easy to play with Krina. She was faster than him, even though he had increased his agility. With Krina's attack, it seems that he was about to lose the 10th time. Krina seems to have so much fun with Alan more than her father. When she stated that, Alan warned her to not let Mr. Gerda, her father, hear that. Alan by a little girl. Since it was obvious from his face, his father came and told him not to feel bad about himself, because his opponent was a sword saint after all, and she will serve the royal family one day. Alan already knew that something was strange about Krina, and he finally understood why she was attending the appraisal ceremony. But Krina preferred to be a swordman rather than a sword saint. She said that something was written about Alan's talent too, and she heard that it was something special. When she asked, Alan's father explained that even though it was special, no one was able to read the letters. So the priest said that he had no talent. Alan knew that even if someone could read the letters, there would be no change because it was showing errors of garbled characters. He was praying to God to fix the talent system, and because of that, he missed the time to talk about being a summoner. His little brother wondered what was wrong with him as he didn't look happy. His father and mother comforted him by saying that even though he had no talent, he was still their proud son, and they believed that he would grow to be a strong man. The family he was in was so poor that they didn't even have a bath, but he was too glad to be reincarnated to that family. His father was 25 years old, and his mother was 23 years old, which means they were still younger than him. While they were talking, Krina's father came, and it was time to go. Today was the day that knights were coming to meet Krina the Sword Saint, and Alan was her companion. While they were walking, the people who saw Krina started to talk about her respectfully. The caste gap between commoners and serfs was big as always. Suddenly, Alan saw the freckled boy who had been bullying him. The boy didn't think he had anything to do with that, as Alan had no talent. Krina defended Alan, and her father stopped her. When Alan was asked if he was fine, he said that he didn't care what the other kids said. A man announced that the knight had arrived and told people to make way. The kids' eyes sparkled when they saw the leader of the swordsman knights. The leader asked if she was the sword saint, and Krina confirmed him. Unexpectedly, the man said that they had to have a duel to test her talent. False talent. Her father tried to object. The man stated that if she refused, he and his daughter would be sentenced to death. Alan was furious and found that unreasonable. Krina's father was still not pleasant with the idea of that, but she seemed to be fine with it and accepted to do it. Her opponent was a man named Ryfriend, and he was a spear user. Krina's father was worried, but it seemed like she was having fun with a grown man. She swung her sword like it had no weight, making everyone surprised except Alan because he knew that she had been playing knights since she was 3, and her swordsman hip skill surpassed his even in hell mode. He finds a chance to kick her to the wall and creates a huge damage. Krina's father couldn't bear watching that scene, but the soldiers were holding him. Alan wanted to do something, but his current status was too low to fight back. But he didn't want her and her family to die. Suddenly, Krina stood up. She jumped on him to counterattack, and she was successful. She was about to continue, but the leader stopped her. She thanked Friend and called him an old man, offending him. People started to cheer up and praise her. Her father embraced her and asked if she was injured, but she seemed fine. Alan was amazed by her one more time. He admitted that the king would be happy to see that. When she asked if she could be a knight now, he said that she needed to wait until she was 12 and then enter the academic city for talented kids. The freckled boy asked if he could go to the academy, and the leader said that he was going to send an instructor for the entrance exam. Alan looked at everyone's stars, and Krina had more stars than the captain. He figured that the stars play a crucial role in status. It seemed that he was the only one living with hell mode in that world, and his 100 times effort in hell mode equals an effort in normal mode. Even though there were no growth limits, it was still null. If 3 stars hold such strength, he wondered how strong he could become. He opened his status and was bummed to see his level being stuck on 1 for the past 5 years. However, he knew that his life as a summoner was just getting started. After the Swordmaster was discovered, his nameless village was renamed Krina Village. Fall had come, and he was 6 now, but still at level 1. Starting at 3 years old, after practicing 1,000 times, his throwing skill had reached level 3, but he would need another 5 years to reach Hell Mode. After practicing his daily throwing exercise, he went home. At night, his father was late today, which was a strange thing. His dad was the leader of the Beast Hunter team in fall and winter. Farmers weren't allowed to do business, so they had to accept it in order to earn more income. When he checked outside, he saw a bunch of men, including Krina's father, carrying his dad. Teresia, Alan's mother, was sobbing her eyes out when she saw her husband Rodan's heavily injured body. Krina's father told her to calm down. Rodan's wound was already closed. Teresia asked where they found that expensive medicine. They found a mirage flower in the woods, and the knights gave them money to buy it. Alan was questioning what was happening because his dad could defeat over 3-meter-tall greed boars and fight 10 of those every year, and his level was always raised considerably. He eventually asked Krina's father, and he said that according to the directive of the village chief, this year, commoners could also participate, and they thought it was easy money, but then panicked and broke the team formation. Rodan did his best to protect them, but ended up getting the most damage. They spent all night waiting for Rodan to wake up, and when the sun rose, he opened his eyes. Teresia and Alan's little brother embraced Rodan while crying from happiness this time. Alan was the oldest there, but couldn't understand why he felt so strange seeing them all together. Between him and that family, he felt like there was an invisible wall. Gelda told Rodan to rest and reassured him that he would take care of everything until Rodan completely healed. Alan interrupted him, saying that it was fine and he was going to take care of his dad's business. He was not going to allow anyone to harm his family. His parents were shocked. It was time for him to quit pretending like a kid, and he made his decision. The next day arrived, and he had already started to work. Farmers had to give the landlord 60% of the harvested crops. To ensure that his family would get through that winter, he needed to store up enough food, so he worked hard. 2 days later, he seemed to have a lot more than he needed. It was time for the meat. And after a while, he was done with that either. The experience he had accumulated for so long was finally enough to open the new skill called Card Enhancement, and it was used to increase the summoned stats. He even got some new members. He summoned Bianta and ordered it to use its skill. With his Provoke, he could catch about 50 birds. Then they would be fine for the winter. But there weren't any birds around, even though Biantas were using their skill. Suddenly, an alba heron came. Alan's dad got inspired by that monster bird when he named Alan. He was huge, about at least 2 meters tall. He didn't expect that, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance, so he prepared himself to hunt his first demon beast. He threw a rock at him, and it seemed that his throwing skill was great, but he wasn't strong enough to defeat it with one hit. He summoned his dogs and ordered them to bite the bird. The dogs started biting the albaharan's body, but 15 dogs were not enough because the bird was a D rank. Albaharan didn't seem to be affected by the dogs, and it crushed Alan's body with its 1 foot. Alan was trying to hold it back while thinking of a way to defeat the beast. Then he summoned Chu and ordered him to such its blood. The pressure was lessened, so it was his chance to counterattack. He was right about using an energy drain in that situation. He used 3 insects and 10 dogs. The bonus stats from Blessing decreased, but most importantly, he tired out his opponent so he had a winning chance now. He gathered all his strength and swung his sword. With one last move, Albaharan was defeated, and he received 100 experience points. He shouted happily and was proud of himself. It felt even more awesome than he thought. Karina and the others were all shocked, especially his father. While they were waiting for the blood to dry, Gelda informed Alan that he had passed his words to the village chief, and if he defeated more Albaherans in the future, then aside from the wings and the galls, he could have the rest of them. Alan thanked Gelda. Now that he knew Bioda's provoke works on demon beasts, he was going to fight an Albaheran every 3 days. He remembered that he got 100 experience points, and when he checked his status, he saw that his stats increased by a lot, and he had finally leveled 2 after 6 years. That was a really long time, as expected of the Hell mode. His strength and magic were also significantly higher than they were at level 1. He knew that it would increase, but didn't expect that much. Since it had been a month now, his father's injuries were fine now, and he decided to talk with them about something. They sat face to face, and Alan started to explain what he had been hiding from them. When he was 1 year old, Alina once said that he needed to overcome many challenges that hundreds of people couldn't overcome, and he had been bestowed with enough special knowledge to do that. While he was explaining, he wondered about their expressions after he finished talking. They seemed quite shocked and didn't want to believe it was true. His father patted his head and said that since birth, he not only had a different hair color from them, but he was also an incredible child, which was why they didn't believe the result of the ceremony, and he believed everything he was saying. Alan apologized for hiding it from them. His father guessed that he had gone through his first challenge. Alan questioned how he knew that, and he said that the small scar on his face disappeared. This made him realize that after leveling up, his old injuries would be healed. Rodin said that he had been given impossible challenges by the ruler of the world, so whenever it gets too hard, he said that he should remember that he had his family with him always. Rodin then asked if Gelda knew about that, because that man was always so proud of his girl, so that was his payback. December came, and Alan and Gelda left the house for the last step. The final step to ensure Alan's family's survival through the winter was exchanging the meat for firewood and salt. While on their way, Alan wanted to ask something, but didn't want Gelda to tell his parents. He asked how a farmer could become a commoner. This made Gelda a bit nervous, but he answered anyway. He said that he needed 10 coins, and the landlord would promote him to a commoner, including the unborn baby inside Alan's mother. His family had 5 members, which meant they needed 50 coins. He decided that before he left Karina village, he was going to help his family become commoners. After a few days of scouting the market, he figured that he needed to kill 500 Albaherans to earn 50 coins, which would take a few years. He wanted to buy a new weapon, but an iron rod was enough to take down 2 Albaherans, and he needed to save up for the food and necessities. He heard someone's voice calling him, and when he looked up, that freckled guy was there, asking what he was doing in front of his dad's shop. He was the son of the weapon shop owner. The kid said that he would let him go if he could take a few hits. Alan hated that kind of useless fights that don't give any experience points in games. When he ignored him and turned to take off the things on his back, the kid thought he was running away, but he was just getting ready to fight. Alan said that he didn't need to ask because he would knock down whoever stood in his way. He told him to come at him in a competing manner. The kid seemed pretty mad and immediately went to attack. But Alan easily dodged him. He was nothing compared to Karina. He defeated him in a second and asked if he wanted to do it again. The kid was trembling and sweating in anger and said that he was going to beat him next time. He said that he would buy something next time and left the shop. 9 months passed and little Miura was born. While Tarisha was watching them with the baby in her arms, Alan and Dagora were fighting again. But it didn't seem like it was an actual fight, as Alan was instructing him about his movements. Alan had been practicing with Mashu, his brother who was 3 years old, and Dagora. He couldn't wait for the assessment in 2 years. At night, Gelda and Rodin came and they seemed pretty exhausted. The village chief summoned them, and this year the target had increased by 5, so they needed to kill 15 boars in total. So that was why they were looking like that. Rodin added that there would be more civilians participating later just like the last year. They tried to object, but it was an order from the Lord. Tarisha was so anxious. They said that it may increase to 20 next year with no negotiation. Alan didn't know the circumstances, but it seemed like monster hunting was being promoted, and it was troubling some since they could not defy direct orders. Suddenly, he had an idea, and he said that the Creator gave him wisdom, so he promised to figure something out soon and told them to leave that to him. In October, Rodin, Gelda, and Alan went back, and their subordinates seemed happy to see Rodin again. They then warned Alan to not get close to the fight, and he was just coming to watch them and learn. A rookie came and tried to say something, but Rodin didn't let him finish and told him to just stay focused. It was time to go now. Their target number increased, so they needed 20 people at that time. He spotted the 2 new guys, and his aim was to assist them with their hunting. He had lived as a farmhand for 7 years, and it was his first time going outside the village. They went outside, and after a while they arrived at the Great Boar hunting ground. The Hakurtu mountain was ahead of them, and great boars usually leave the mountains in autumn. Just as the name indicated, there was a white dragon living on top of the mountain, and he dreamed that one day it would become his quarry. One of the workers informed the others that it was coming. The boar appeared, and it was terrifyingly powerful, but Gelda and the others seemed pretty confident. The boar came at them, but they collectively worked and stopped it. Their tactic was to lure the prey to them, then hold it down and attack its key points. Alan informed the new guy that it was his turn now. Last year, as per the chief's order, civilians were tasked with holding the boars down because it seemed simple enough, but they weren't strong enough, so it caused trouble. As a result, Alan's dad was heavily injured. Right from the start, it was a mistake to let the newcomers charge ahead. They just needed to hide and wait for the opportunity. After the new guys went to help, it was Denka's turn. Denka used his skill, and Rodan defeated the boar with one move. The new ones were shocked and happy that their power was increasing, just as Alan thought their experience greatly increased, and if they kept that up, they were going to be at the front line in no time. They got a bit more combat experience now, so they should be able to kill 15 boars quickly. When he hopelessly checked his status, he saw that he also leveled up and gained 400 experience points. From now on, until he earned 50 coins, he decides to hunt more boars and albiharans for more experience. He believed that his life was going to change once his level was high enough. 5 months later in June, his level was at 4, and his summoning skill leveled up. He had been training his magic every day, and after 1 year and 10 months, he could finally become an E-rank animal. There were 2 notable changes. Infinite tools could be stored in a black hole of about 30 square centimeters, which was called storage. Moreover, to create or enhance E-rank animals, he needs magic stones found in the body of the beasts he kills. He wondered if the horned rabbit he hunted for food once had any stone. E-rank tones were useless, so he could pick up plenty in the forest. Gathering stones was going to be tiring, but there was that storage skill. 3 months later, he could summon E-ranking animals. He also learned the intention of the game maker. He had always wondered how a summoner was going to fight, and how they could make the most of their ability. The game maker was also the creator of that world, and he could finally see his path now. He examined the animals he summoned. Insects weaken the opponents, animals attack, birds transmit and collect information, and the grass heals. Thus, the classes of summons take on every role in a battle, so that was the true power of a summoner. The future suddenly flashed before his eyes, an army of summoned beasts that could defeat every enemy, flatten every battlefield, and the leader of that army was Alan. One day, the Lord Granbull came to their village for the first time. Since he was the one who ordered them to beat 20 boars, Alan didn't like him at all. He was only there to watch them hunt boars. Yet he brought so many people with him. He thanked them to coming to greet him. He also said that the order of hunting 20 boar came directly from the king, so he couldn't refuse. Alan was surprised that the story was getting bigger and bigger. Granbull noticed Alan and asked if he was the man's son. When Alan was introduced as the hunter Rodan's child and their deputy guide, Granbull's daughter Cecil called Rodan a serf. Granbull got angry at her and said that the serfs were still his good people and warned her. She apologized, but still glared at Alan unfriendly, even though he didn't give a single care about her. Granbull requested Alan to lead the way. To fulfill the royal order this time, his strongest knights were going to be the hunters. Alan firmly stated that the quota of 20 boars that Baron gave them could be an achievable goal if Karina villagers worked together according to his father. Before he could answer him, the boar hunting group had returned, and they defeated 3 boars in just one trip, making him shocked. Their armors were noticed, and Alan explained that they were made from the boar skin that the Baron gave them last year. Moreover, they also recruited 20 more hunters this year. Granbull seemed pleasant with their performance. It was admirable that they could kill 3 boars in one day, which means there were 17 boars left. Alan corrected them that only 10 were left, but that was impossible as they just started half a month ago. He said that they had more people so they could kill more boars in one trip. To conclude, he said that they could handle it by themselves for the quota of this year. Granbull understood that he didn't need to worry anymore. When he was about to go, Alan respectfully stated that for future hunts, his father requested to keep the boar skin. Granbull didn't think there would be any problem with that and allowed them. His assistant suggested confirming it before accepting as he was just a child, but he didn't think it was necessary because he had no reason to lie. At the village chief's house, Gelda, Alan, and Rodan were sitting in front of the leader. He said that the territory reclamation order had been spread throughout their country for 15 years. While several villages had failed to fulfill it, Karina's success was wonderful. He told Gelda and Rhoda what he heard about them leading the hunts for 10 years and praised them for working hard to contribute to the development of the village. He stated that they deserved to be rewarded for their bravery. Unexpectedly, he made both Gelda and Rodan's family commoners and told them to continue to fulfill the duties of commoners. They were shocked by that reward. Alan was filled with happiness because finally he achieved his goal. He had been aiming for this reward since he heard that the boar hunting trips were the Lord's order. He only earned 5 coins last year, so he was pretty depressed. He was so happy that he could leave the village to go hunting whenever he wanted. Granbiel continued, saying that all the other serfs who also been hunting for 10 years or more will be rewarded as well. Whether to pay taxes as a commoner or live as a serf, they can consider their choice carefully. He then wondered why they decided to hunt C-ranked great boars. Alan didn't know that either, as his father had never mentioned. Rodan didn't say anything, and Gelda wanted to explain. Apparently 13 years ago, they started exploring that land with other serfs. However, in the fall, many great boars attacked and stole the food they saved for winter. They originally participated in the exploration because they didn't have enough to eat, so they had no place to return to. Then Rodan announced that they were going to hunt and eat those boars. They were lucky enough to kill one, but they lost a friend in that fight. Gelda always wanted to tell Rodan to stop blaming himself for that. The leader trusted Gelda and wanted to reward Rodan's bravery in the past, and said that he could ask for anything. After thinking for a moment, he wanted him to allow his son Alan to work at his house. He was much smarter than his father, and Rodan was sure that he would be useful to him. Not only the leader, Alan was also shocked and tried to object, but his father didn't seem to be listening to him. The leader's assistants didn't have any objections, as there was no doubt that he was a smart child. Alan tried to find a way to oppose that, because his dream of monster hunting was right in front of him. If he worked at the Baron's house, it would be even more inconvenient than now. But the Baron said that he wouldn't hire him as an errand boy. He wanted Alan to be in the house. His father seemed surprised and excited, but he didn't even know there was a difference between those two jobs, and the only thing he could think is to find a way to refuse that. However, when he looked at his father, he saw that his face was covered in tears of happiness, and there was no way he could refuse something like that after seeing his father's proud face. With that, he became a servant for the Baron's house and was going to leave the village with the Baron in a few days. His brother was crying, and Karina also didn't seem happy about that. He told her to take care, but she didn't answer him back, so he offered to play night again. Both Karina's and Alan's families were watching their goodbye night play. They started to fight, and they noticed that Alan was much faster now. He was literally pushing her back with his attack. Alan was dedicated to winning today, and he sure did. They were all shocked that Alan won the play for the first time, but he said that it was a draw and they hadn't settled it yet, so they should play again. Karina accepted and promised to be stronger next time. Alan noticed that she didn't use that move she used against the deputy commander of the Knights. She was going to go to the academy soon and then serve the royal family, so their chance of meeting again was slim. He used all of his magic stones for that fight, but it was good to see her smiling face as a goodbye. Alan was leaving, so he hugged his mother and tried to stop himself from crying in front of his little brother. He told his brother that he had to be strong to protect their little sister. Dogora came and gave him a dagger from their family's shop and left. The carriage arrived, and his life was about to change the moment he stepped into that carriage. His father told him that his future will now end at being a servant forever, as if he read his mind and advised him to make use of that opportunity. After that, he got into the carriage and left Karina to begin his life in the Granbiel house. At the Granbiel city, we see Cecil being on Alan's shoulder to pick an apple from the tree. After leaving Karina and coming to the Baron's house, Alan became the personal servant of Cecil at his request. When she tasted the apple, it was so sour, so she wanted to eat Pawpaw to wash out the taste, and told him to go to the market and buy some for her. Day by day, he was constantly ordered around by another 8-year-old girl and had no chance to go monster hunting. When he was about to go, they noticed an airship, and it looked like a flying city. Cecil corrected him that it was a magic ship. Her brother was going to return from the academy in spring, as she mentioned. She then told him to hurry up and go. After another day as a servant, he returned to the loft behind the mansion and had a good sleep. He smelled a poo, which ability was restore someone's energy in 5 to 6 hours for 24 hours after smelling its scent. His room was only about the size of one room in a net cafe, but since no one lived there other than him, He could practice magic as much as he wanted. He got ready and entered the mansion. Risco greeted him and asked if he was all right being Cecil's servant. In Baron Granbiel's house, there were 30 servants in total. In this world, a noble house also includes their servants. However, those who had only worked there for a short time wouldn't include it. After having breakfast with the servants, he went to Cecil's room. He had two main duties in that house. First, taking care of Cecil and serving meals. The servants' meals were simple, like bread and vegetable soup, but the family's meals weren't like that. He wondered if the Baron family was trying to be frugal. Lady Granbiel noticed that Alan was used to working here now. He said that everyone had been helping him a lot. She couldn't even tell he was a serf because of his looks and intelligence, but Granbiel knew that he didn't have any talent. It was understandable that he knew a lot of things about him, but Cecil seemed surprised that he didn't. She said that she was a sorcerer and her Mihai was a swordsman. Alan was impressed, as sorcerer was a 2-star talent. Her father, Mr. Granbiel, warned Cecil to not carelessly reveal her talent like that. He then turned to Thomas, his other son. Thomas was crying because he didn't have any talent either, but wanted to study at the academy like his older brother and Cecil. Talents were more likely to appear among low-ranking commoners and serfs, so it wasn't surprising to Alan. 2 among 3 of their children had talents, which was the real point. He was surprised because it was a rare thing to happen. Lady Granbiel stated that Thomas didn't need to apologize, and Mr. Granbiel added by saying he was accepted into the House of Lords, and he would meet great people without talents there. Lady Granbiel mentioned that she and Mr. Granbiel met at a ball there. Cecil was going to be studying at the academy when she was 12, and start learning like Karina and Dagora. In the next scene, Alan has a day off, so he goes out to the city to collect information. There was no curfew for a servant, so he needed to come back before the next morning. The market was located at the north gate of the territory, and it was a 2-hour walk to the central square of the market. If he starts from the south gate, it would take 4 hours. While he was exploring the city, he realized that Karina Village was no match for that place. He then arrived at the Adventurer Guild. In this world, there was an organization of adventurers called the Adventurer Guild. Basically, adventurers earn a living by hunting monsters, and that was exactly the job Alan needed. He could earn both experience points and money. When he entered, the receptionist woman said that adventurers could only sign up when they were 12 years old, so he wasn't allowed to join. This devastated him, but even though he wanted to work as a servant for a few years to please his dad, he was not planning to give up on monster hunting. Before he left the Adventurers Guild, he noticed that there was a bulletin board for mission requests. There were a lot of species there, like horned rabbits, ogres, armored ants, and so on. But strangely, there was no information on where they usually live. While he was checking the board, a man saw him and asked why there was a kid in there and told him that this was not a playground. Alan ignored his statement and asked where he could find that type of monster. The man didn't understand why he was asking him in an annoyed manner. Alan answered that he would go away if he answered. The man explained that it was usually difficult to get to those places, so it doesn't state where they live. They say the closer you get to the White Dragon Mountain, the more high-level monsters appear. Alan was surprised that he was telling him everything. The White Dragon Mountain was the place where the great boars were born. The man mentioned that he had never been there, but he heard that it would take 7 days to get there from here. Since he answered Alan's question, he should go away, but he asked if he was familiar with the roads around there, making him annoyed. Alan then noticed that there was one monster that had written its place, and it was Murugolsh. He realized that his father named Machu after those. The man said that those things were too fast for adventurers like him, so he left that to the knights. When Alan asked about the White Dragon, he said that he was hoping the knights would kill that one too. It was still a mystery of that place. Because of it, they were still unable to exploit anything from the mountain. Even if the reward was 1,000 copper pieces, the mission was still considered too dangerous. So no one wants to fight the White Dragon, even with such a huge reward. 2 women came and told Levin, apparently that was the man's name, to go to celebrate as their job was done there. They then noticed Alan and said that his hair was pretty rare. Alan thanked Revan for the information and left the Adventurer Guild. He had heard what he needed to know, and it was pretty clear what he was going to do next. In the middle of November, the weather was cold and it was going to snow soon. Alan arrived at the Granville's north gate and the guardian asked if he had a pass. When he showed the Baron's crest, the guardian man apologized for asking as he didn't know he belonged to the Baron's house. Alan finds that crest pretty useful. The gate opened and the day he had been waiting finally arrived. He was outside. He had a whole day off, so he excitedly started to run to go hunting. The guardian suggested having a guard with him since it was dangerous out there, but he was already gone. Alan knew that it would be troublesome to get too close to the mountain and encounter high-ranked monsters, so he aimed for the D-rank monsters. If they were like the Albaharan, he wouldn't lose. He had run 10 kilometers and stopped in the middle of the forest. He summoned a bird named Hook and told him to move to the right by 1 meter to test its intelligence, and it moved right away. He patted its head. It was much more intelligent now after enhancement, and it was the only one among his summons that could understand all his orders. He ordered them to use their hawkeye to look for the monsters. They were pretty far from the city by now, but they didn't see any monsters. He had to wait about an hour for the Albaharan, so it looked like the random monster encounter rate was pretty low. He took off the dagger he got from Dagora. Hook came, and it looked like it was quicker to look from the sky. He continued to walk towards the area carefully. He needed to make it clearer to his summon, but he couldn't find anything. Then he encountered a bunch of goblins who were 1.5 meters tall. When he counted them, there were only 5 of them. He summoned Tama and counted on them. Within a diameter of 50 meters, he could summon his animal and block their retreat just to be safe. Now, Alan's first real battle started. There was a harsh fight between the Thomas and the goblins, but Alan believed that Tama could handle this. However, the goblins were using their swords, and with one hit, one of the Thomas disappeared. This wasn't going to be an easy win, so he decided to try Ageha, a poisonous butterfly. Ageha released something and the goblins fell asleep. This gave him the chance to throw them rocks. But just like Albaharan, he couldn't kill a D-rank monster with stones. He ordered Tama to go, and Tama finished. He received 200 experience points from one goblin. It had been less than 2 hours, but he already gained 1,000 experience points with 1/5 goblin. This hunt was much more efficient than he had expected, and those monsters gave the most experience points so far. He then looked at one of the goblin's bodies and used his dagger to take off the stone from its body. He didn't like doing that, but magic stones were a summoner's lifeline and he had to collect them. Some time passed and Hook found 5 goblins within 3 kilometers from there, and so far he had defeated 80 goblins and 5 horned rabbits. His level had also gone up by 2, and he was now level 9. He also learned more about Ageha's skills during his hunting experience. Its success rate was not 100%, and one summon could use its skill on multiple opponents. If the opponent was 2 or more ranks higher, he would need to use multiple summonses. He lost a few Tomas this time, so he had got to collect more E-rank stones to create new ones. But it was getting dark, so he needed to go. But hooks weren't moving. He asked what was wrong and noticed that they couldn't see well because it was getting too dark. He was shocked that they had normal bird's eyes. He tried to find his way home by himself, and with that, the first hunting experience was over. A month passed, and it became routine for him to go hunt every 6 days. It was his 4th time this month, and his level was now 12. As he got used to hunting, he started wanting more things. Although he still hadn't saved enough to buy good equipment and weapons, hunting monsters, earning experience points, and getting better equipment was so easy. But the problem was that he only earned 50 silver coins as a servant every month. While he was about to sneak out before the sun rose, one of the servants called him. They went to Mr. Granville's room, and he first praised his performance and said that the butler's reports only had praises for him. However, he tried to sneak out before sunrise again, so he wondered what he had been doing on his days off this month. Alan knew that he should be careful with his lies, but then decided to tell the truth that he was going to monster hunting outside the city. They were shocked by his honesty, and he continued saying that he was the son of the hunter Rodan, and it was his family's way of life to hunt monsters. He aimed to sound natural to make his situation understandable. It was normal for sons to want to follow in their father's footsteps. Mr. Granville seemed like he understood him, as he was the child of a hero. The butler asked what did he do with the horned rabbits he killed. This surprised him at first, but he found it normal for them to think that he could only hunt E-rank monsters. The butler mentioned that if he was selling them to a butcher for pocket money, he must stop as it would cause rumors. Instead, they would pay him 1 silver coin for each of them. This cherished Alan a lot, as he could go hunting proudly now that the discarded meat could turn into money. 6 days passed, and it was his another day off. He was eating his fruit while thinking about his goal for today. He aimed to kill 100 goblins today, and then 5 horned rabbits. Hook came and started to yell at him. He wanted a minute to finish eating, but the bird just didn't stop yelling. Hook then flew towards somewhere and he started to follow him. Hook was going too far because he instructed it to search within 3 kilometers. As he ran, he started to hear some people's voices, and it seemed like there was a fight. There were 4 goblins, and the people who were fighting with them were the guy named Levin and his team from the Adventurer Guild. Levin was heavily injured, so only the 2 of them were able to fight. Alan remembered them and immediately got 3 iron balls custom-made by a weapon shop. He aimed one of the goblins and shot it with the ball. The girl was shocked, but they didn't have time to chat, so Alan only said that he was there to help. With the number 2, he shot another goblin and there were only 2 goblins left, but they weren't dying or anything. He didn't want to use his summons in front of other people, so he was on his own this time. Before he ran towards the goblins, he informed the other girl that he would take of those on the right. Until now, he had been avoiding fighting the goblins directly just to keep his borrowed clothes clean. He already defeated one of them in a minute and then moved to the next. Meanwhile, the other girl named Marishi killed one of the goblins. But Levin didn't seem like he was going to make it, so she had to heal him because the other girl was almost out of mana. Marishi couldn't hold her tears back. While they were praying that Levin would be all right, Alan already killed 3 goblins and came for their help. The girls were shocked, but he didn't care, and said that he had some herbs on him and asked if they wanted to use them. The girls were desperate and were willing to pay as much as he wanted. He took off the recovery herb, thinking it was probably a health recovery herb. He didn't want to use Levin as a test subject, but there was no other choice. Fortunately, the herb worked, and his wound immediately healed. He even opened his eyes. The girls were so happy that Levin was okay, and Alan was glad that the herb worked. He then moved to Marishi and healed her arm. They were shocked that it healed her arm in a second, and he has the Maradzi flower, which was a precious herb. Alan's father didn't heal so fast when he was injured like that. Maradzi flower could recover one's maximum physical strength, and recovery herb could only heal to some extent. Levin then realized that the boy who saved his life was the boy that he met at the guild before and asked what was his talent. When Alan said that he wasn't given any talent, they were taken aback and found him pretty cool. They wanted to pay him back for saving them, but all he wanted was for them to not tell anyone about him. He just wanted to go back to the hunt. They didn't mind that, but asked if there was anything else. Alan wanted their magic stones from the goblins and 100 of their E-rank stones, and that was enough for him. When they gave him what he wanted, they headed to the city as they weren't lucky today. After they left, Alan wanted to check before going back to hunting and summoned Hook. He asked why it didn't follow his instructions about staying away from other people. Hook seemed pretty timid. When he noticed its face, he realized that Hook was just autonomous. Summons were supposed to follow the master's orders. Alan thought their stats and skills were for the summon to determine how to use them, but Hook ignored his instructions and prioritized its own will. So those were the type of summons created by the god of this world. He comforted Hook that he wasn't blaming him and said that next time, he would think about his instructions in case he found someone who needed help again. This time, Hook warbled because of its happiness. A few days after parting with Levin's team, he now knew that the summons had minds of their own, and he had also managed to gather 100 E-rank magic stones. From now on, he didn't know how he was going to progress on his path to becoming a summoner, because hunting was really useful for him. In late December, while he was sweeping the floor, the Knight's commander came and Alan greeted him. The commander stated that he seemed much better after 2 months. He sometimes came to trade information with the Baron, so he was seeing him often. The Knight's job was to protect the Lord, catch criminals, and subjugate monsters. This was not an army created to fight with other people, and it seemed like this country didn't need to worry about being involved in the war, which was a relief. They sat at the dinner table, and while eating their meal, the commander asked if that meat was from the horn rabbits that Alan caught. Cecil said that he caught 5 rabbits in just 1 day. The commander seemed impressed. He informed Alan that Karina Village had successfully defeated 20 great boars. Cecil's big sister and others were amazed by Alan's father. Their brother then wondered why they didn't get to taste it. As he remembered, last winter they got to eat boar meat. That was also strange for Alan because the amount of boars they caught in October should have provided tons of meat. He wondered if it was taken straight to the royal capital because of the king's order. Mr. Granville warned his son to not say selfish things. It seemed like the Baron's kids got to eat even less meat than the serf and Karina. He then asked Alan to catch a white deer this time, but Cecil interrupted him by saying that if he wanted to order Alan around, he had to run it through her first. Her brother whispered something in her ear, and it seemed like she was convinced. Lady Granville told Tomes to not bother Alan like that. White deer was a C rank, just like the great boar. His father's team had hunted those before, so it was time for him to try it himself. When his day off arrived, he went straight into the forest and found a C-rank white deer. He cannot tell himself a summoner if he can't utilize his summons ability. With his brilliant plan, he successfully killed his first white deer and received 2,500 experience points. He had hunted 100 goblins, which gave him 20,000 experience points. He guessed that he would get praised for that and went back to the Baron's mansion. When he arrived, Mr. Granville thought there was a monster that appeared in the mansion area and ordered his butlers to pick up their weapons and hold out the monster until the knights came to his aid. However, behind the gigantic corpse of the white deer, Alan was there and informed him that he had captured a white deer. Mr. Granville was shocked and the kids were so happy, especially Tomes. Tomes immediately informed Lady Granville that they didn't need to worry about the New Year party anymore, and Lady Granville was glad. They thanked Alan, and Mr. Granville was still questioning how Alan was truly a talentless kid. He single-handedly killed a C-rank monster at 8 years old, so he ordered his workers to recheck his background. Thanks to Alan's achievement that day, the Baron family no longer worries about the meat. Once a week, he was going to be entrusted with a new hunting day, which included hunting monsters to get edible meat and helping people who were in trouble with the monsters. His salary was also doubled to 100 silver coins. No matter how much he hunted, his salary was fixed. He was not dissatisfied, but it seemed like the Baron was in financial difficulty. He was glad that he could go hunting twice a week now. March came and the weather got warmer. Cecil woke Alan, who was sleeping in the carriage where they were meeting with her big brother. Alan apologized and wondered why she brought him along with her. Today, they came there to pick up Baron's eldest son, who lives in the dormitory of his school in the city. While Cecil was in a hurry to see her brother, Alan prayed that her brother wasn't similar to her. They then saw a magic ship, and it was so amazing up close. He wondered what was the principle with the fueling. In this world, the clocks were in the duodecimal system, which was quite developed. The people were coming out of the magic ship, and they saw Cecil's brother. He greeted Cecil, and she ran to hug him. He then noticed Alan and stated that he was pretty young and asked if he was a new servant. He confirmed him by saying that he had been a servant since last fall. Cecil said that her servant was a hunter, which the big brother found excellent. Alan was shocked that he was way calmer than Cecil. Cecil's brother then took off a package of gifts and said that he got it from the capital. Cecil thanked him and promised to take care of it. They seemed pretty close, which made Alan wonder how Mashu and Miura were doing. The next scene was the first hunting day since Mihai returned home for his spring break, and Cecil ordered Alan to hunt a lot. So he hunted 5 horned rabbits, big toad feet, and an abarred ori. He wondered if they were having a feast when he returned. His storage was limitless, but those things were too big to be put through the hole, so he had attracted a lot of attention walking like that on the streets. The guardian welcomed him and opened the door. When they went inside the mansion area, he saw that Mihai and the commander were practicing. From what he saw, he found Mihai's movements amazing, and it was his first time seeing the commander using his sword. The commander decided to stop for today and stated that Mihai improved a lot in the past year. Mihai thanked him, but then said that he was 13, so he didn't want him to call him young master. The whole family was watching them, and Cecil noticed that Alan was back. She said that the head chef would be happy for his hunted animals. Mihai approached Alan and asked if he had time to spare with him. Alan seemed surprised, and before he answered, the commander lent his sword to him. The sword was the miserable, as expected of the commander. It was Alan's first fight since that one against Karina. He checked his status, and his status was still in hunting mode, but he wanted to fight seriously. Cecil worried if Alan could use such a big sword, but Thomas wasn't worried as he could defeat a C-rank monster. They got ready, and the commander started their fight. Alan tried not to get hurt and be careful. With their first touch, Alan noted the attack wasn't really strong, and the strike didn't do anything to Mihai. He didn't realize until now that he was losing speed. He went back and made a powerful attack, but Mihai stopped him with one hand. While they were fighting, Lady Granville seemed worried so. The commander comforted her that Mihai had survived through a year in the academy, so there was no way he could lose to someone who had never gone to school. With that, Mihai made his last attack and caused Alan to lose the match. The duel ended there, and Mihai praised Alan's skill, saying that he was excellent for a young boy. Alan thanked him, but was still shocked at how strong he was. Cecil and Thomas came, and they praised how fast their brother was. He said that he had to be fast because he was going to fight in the dungeon during the summer vacation. They seemed pretty shocked. He said that they were going to fight monsters in the dungeon, and he was told to drop out if he can't get through it. His siblings were upset that he wouldn't be home this summer. He said that even though it could be tough, the holy sword Dobrig gave him his sword, so it was fun too. Alan was listening to him carefully and found it amazing. Exploring the dungeon and learning from the holy sword was indeed amazing. When Cecil asked when he was going to be at home again, Mihai said that the next spring break. Alan confidently wanted to fight with him again at that time. This surprised him for a moment, but accepted. He then told him to take care of his sister, and he said yes, like he was steadily establishing his position as a servant. He wanted to go hunting every day. At this rate, he was going to be Cecil's servant for the rest of his life, and he knew he needed to find a way to quit without bringing shame to his dad. A few days passed, and Mihai returned to the academy with the magic ship he came there with. Cecil's eyes teared up while all Alan could think about was the dungeon where Karina, Cecil, and Dagora were going to go. In the next scene, Baron Granbiel was hosting Viscount Clanel, who were one rank higher than Baron. Alan entered while they were talking, and Viscount found his hair pretty rare. Alan served them the boar meat, and Viscount Clanel seemed to like it. Alan was glaring at him with hostility because he was the one who ordered the unreasonable boar hunting. The Granbiel and Clanel territories lie beside each other across the White Dragon Mountain. Inside the mountain, there was a vein of mithril, but the White Dragon was in the Granbiel territory. Thus, only the Kalnal territory flourishes by mining mithril. However, 100 years ago, the White Dragon was in the Kalnal territory. The situation was the opposite of now. The two territories seem to have been on bad terms for generations because of the White Dragon and the mining of mithril. Whatever the reason behind Viscount Kalnal's bad personality was, it didn't matter when he told the king to order the boar hunting. Mr. Granbiel required to know what was the reason for him to come there. He said that a few days ago, his youngest daughter attended the appraisal ceremony, and he was there to tell him the result. His youngest was the same age as Mashu. Viscount happily announced that his daughter was talentless. He added that he was sorry for Lord Granbiel, as 2 out of his 3 children had talents. Granbiel seemed annoyed and prayed that he would have a child with talent someday, and he would have to fulfill the noble's duty just the same as him. Alan was confused as to why was it bad to have talent, because the airship was flying proudly in the sky. While the Viscount was leaving, Alan was thinking about how hassle being a noble was. By this autumn, he would have been working at the Granbiel house for a year, and he was now 9 years old. Back in Karina, everyone must have started a new boar hunting season by now. He looked at his status, and it seemed like he was slowly getting all the necessary equipment. No matter how many times he looked at his status already, it still felt good to see that he was improving. He may even be able to hunt 3 times the usual today, and maybe even 5 times if he is lucky. After killing 10,000 goblins, he finally leveled up. So today, he planned to fight some higher-ranked monsters. He sent Hook as always to find some monsters, and after running for a while, he encountered the monster Levin mentioned and armored Annie. The ant was about 3 meters tall. He summoned Tamis, and they surrounded the ant. They started to attack the ant, but it seemed like the method he was using wasn't very effective. He had to change the strategy and summoned Ejahas to make it sleep. Their poison seemed to work on a C-rank monster like the ant, which made Alan pretty happy. It wasn't fully effective, but was good enough. He could still use this strategy on White Deer. He needed to kill it before it woke and started to look for the wound caused by Thomas. When he found it, he used his dagger to kill it, but wasn't sure if his offense stat would be enough. He aimed its neck, but it was still too hard. He needed a better dagger. The ant started to wake up. Alan was dedicated to not letting it escape, so he used all his strength. After using his last strength, the ant was dead, and he received 3,000 experience points. He seemed relieved and started to collect the magic stone. But no matter how hard he hit, its skin was so firm that he couldn't penetrate it. With the anger from not being able to collect the magic stones, he decided to look for orcs. After a while, Hook found one, and Alan started to watch it from a distance. It was pretty big, around 2 meters tall, but surprisingly, it was sleeping. Alan's summons were never exhausted, but it seemed like the monsters also needed to sleep. Since it was the right time, he summoned Thomas, and they started to bite the orc. It worked at first, but the orc woke up and took out 3 Thomas in one strike. But it wasn't that important. He ordered them to scratch, and they tore the orc in pieces. He received 1,500 points and successfully collected the magic stones. And it wasn't like the normal ones. It was a C-rank magic stone. He wondered if he would need a lot of this later. Alan was proud of himself because he killed a C-rank monster without needing to use traps. but then remembered that he was defeated by a 15-year-old kid from the academy, so he couldn't consider himself as strong. Furthermore, Academy alumni like the Knight Commander or the Vice Commander must be much stronger than Mihai, although the Vice Commander lost against a 5-year-old Karina. In this world, Academy graduates are overwhelmingly powerful people, and they account for less than 1% of the population. This made Alan more willing to become stronger in this hell mode. His next goal was to kill 2 orcs at once. At the end of the day, he killed 15 orcs and 1 ant, with 25,500 experience points. He happily returned to the mansion. He planned about killing 40 orcs a day, which was 60,000 experience points. Early November came, and Cecil's teacher came to the Baron's mansion. Cecil warned Alan to not say anything rude in front of his teacher. Today, he was allowed to attend classes with Cecil as a present for the first anniversary of servitude. The bearded old teacher asked if Alan had any questions for him. Alan asked if he could tell him the conditions for using magic. With his summoner talent, he made a hypothesis. The creator of the world set the growth rate of a summoner's intelligence at S. That's why when his level went up, it also became easier to learn things. Then he wondered if his intelligence could be used for learning magic. Cecil couldn't understand why he wanted to know that, as he didn't have any talent. The teacher agreed to explain it briefly. The teacher stated that he would need a talent that could use magic. Without it, he wouldn't be able to use any spell. Alan was disappointed. The teacher then mentioned that Cecil could not use magic yet, even though she said she was a sorcerer. She wanted the teacher to bring out his crystal ball to prove that she could use magic. She did prove it because the crystal lit up. Alan wanted to try it too, and the teacher allowed him. It was his chance to see if he could use magic. But no matter how hard he tried, the crystal ball didn't shine. He couldn't believe magic was impossible for him, because if that was the case, then what the heck was his high intelligence for? With his current status, he couldn't use magic, and he couldn't win with a sword either. Thus, the hypothesis was quietly denounced. December arrived, and it had been a year since he was officially allowed to hunt, and somehow he had gained many more acquaintances in the city. While he was in the town, he noticed some hustle between the villagers and Levin's team running towards somewhere. Alan approached them and asked what was happening. Levin said that Madagalshu appeared near the south gate. Alan asked if they were going to fight, but they were definitely not. Only the strongest person in the territory, the Knight Commander, would have a chance against that thing. But the Commander and the Vice Commander were absent right now. That's why they need to evacuate people before the monster kills everyone. Alan acknowledged that the situation was bad because most of the adventurers in the city were talentless, so they wouldn't be able to fight it. Helping those who were in trouble with monsters was the duty of the Granbiel family's hunter, so Alan thought Baron would forgive him for acting on his own this time, and decided to hunt Madagalshu down. People were hurrying to get out of the place while he was going ahead of them. The soldiers were trying to close the gate before it got close to the city. Alan arrived at the gate and saw the enormous presence of the B-rank monster, Madagalshu. He was taken aback by how big the monster was. It was about to eat the people in the carriage he was holding. The man was begging the soldiers to save his wife and daughter in the carriage, but they couldn't even move an inch. Alan took out a ball and threw it to catch its attention. The monster growled at him, and it seemed like his plan worked. He was yelling at him to make him drop the carriage so that the woman and her daughter could run away. The soldiers and Levin were shocked and tried to stop him from throwing himself into danger. Alan looked at his stats, and he needed to speed up because his mana still hasn't recovered yet. He started to run away from the monster, but the monster was too fast. Luckily, he got away from its fits. Alan realized that the monster was not rushing to kill him. It was literally having fun. He cursed at his father's naming skills. The Madagalshu was grinning gleefully while Alan was full of anger. He was about to make it regret not attacking him. He summoned bugs and birds that had the agility and way. Everyone was shocked that he used himself as bait. They were running towards the forest. Now that they were quite far from the city, he ordered a Gehas to put it to sleep. But the monster cut the butterflies like they were nothing. After some time passed, Alan was catching his breath while hiding behind a tree. He knew he lost it because all his debuffs didn't work. He had to get more experience points for now and take his revenge after. He was glad that at least he could lure it far enough from the city. However, while he was walking, the monster appeared behind him with its disgusting, mocking face. He started to run away from it, but then encountered the orcs and armored ants. 3 days passed, and Alan arrived at the gate looking miserable. Before he could say that he was back, he fainted. The soldiers carried him and contacted the Baron. They brought him to the mansion, and after 2 days, Alan woke up. When he woke up, Cecil was looking at him with a concerned face. Alan was surprised to see her this worried, but she said that he was his servant, so it was natural that she was worried. She asked if he was hungry or wanted something to eat, but he was just glad that he came back alive. Thomas and the butler came, and he expressed his happiness about him being okay. The butler said that once he felt better, he should come back and report to the Baron. Alan got anxious that Baron was mad at him for staying out without permission. When he entered his room, the first thing Baron said was to ask him what he was thinking. Alan bowed and apologized for acting on his own, but Baron couldn't figure out why he was apologizing. Protecting the people was the duty of the knights, and on behalf of the knights, he thanked her for fulfilling that duty in their absence. He stated that Alan didn't do anything wrong in this case, and thanks to him, the city only suffered minimal damage. His reward was 10 gold coins and another 10 gold coins from the family on the carriage that he saved. The Baron was so generous with this, he could buy better weapons than iron swords. He knew he was going straight to the weapon shop. Baron also warned him to not go too far from the city next time he hunts monsters. With the relief that it all went smoothly, he promised to be more careful and left the room. After buying his new sword, he went to the corpse of the armored ant he killed before to test if it could cut it easily. As expected of a mithril sword, it was very sharp. With this monster with hard armor shouldn't be a problem. Furthermore, he made a happy discovery this time. The memories of a previously summoned beast will be carried to the newly summoned one. Hook still had memories from the previous fight, and it was watching out for Madagalshu. The summons walk with the summoner. Turned out they were entities that stored all hard-earned information and continued to grow. But in the meantime, that giant D-rank bird, those ferocious goblins, the C-rank monsters that an average adventurer can't take on alone, the B-rank monster that was overwhelmingly powerful for humans, were too strong for this world. Spring had come, and the eldest son of Gabriel returned home and rematched with Alan as promised. Alan's current level was much higher than last time, but his opponent was 100 times faster than him, so must be cautious. The duel began, and the whole family was watching. They started fighting, but Alan was much weaker now, and he lost within a minute. He was so mad at himself for losing because he had grown up so much more than last year, and his height also increased. Commander praised Mihai. Mihai then stated that Alan also improved a lot, and he was surprised. Now he could rest assured that he was taking care of Cecil. Cecil whispered to Alan's ear that he should practice more to defeat her brother. At the dinner, they mentioned that Aline fought against the Madagalshu. Cecil said that he was chased for 3 days, then got home and slept for 2 days in a row. Thomas asked if he could defeat it, but Cecil found it impossible for him to defeat a B-ranked beast all by himself, even though it was her brother. Suddenly, one of the soldiers came inside the dining room and informed Baron that the white dragon had awakened. The tension in the room increased as they heard the white dragon, the beast, had been sleeping in the mountain for 100 years. The soldier added that an adventure guild saw the white dragon fly towards the Kalnal's territory. Baron ordered to conduct an investigation on all of the miserable mines. Commander seemed pretty chill about the situation and informed Baron that they needed to investigate the 4 main mines first to know the new settlement of the White Dragon. The slopes and foothills of the White Dragon Mountain were full of high-ranked goblins and orcs, so it would probably take a few months. Thomas and Cecil were pretty excited about all that, as history was going to change after 100 years. Mihai was also excited that his return next year was going to be so much fun. Commander warned everyone to keep it a secret, as there was still a chance that the White Dragon would come back. Alan was also nervous. He didn't want to lose his chance to hunt the beast by himself because of a large-scale punishment. In the first week of July, Alan checked his stats, and it seemed like it was a fruitful day. The movement of the White Dragon towards Kalnal was indicated. He needed to check more things out there. It took 2 more years to go level 1 up in summoning skill. Rank D summoner seemed to be the lowest, but he wanted to see the comradeship skill first. He hoped that it was also useful like storage. He ordered Hook to comradeship, and suddenly something weird happened. This was his vision through Hook's eyes, so now he could also see what it sees. He figured that it was the ability of observation assimilation for both of them. When Hook flies, he notices that not just vision, but also hearing is shared as if he was riding it around. Combined with the Hawkeye skill, he could see miles ahead. He then noticed that Hook flew 50 meters above him, so he couldn't give orders when he was out of this range. It was the same as controlling several characters at the same time through the screens. Even though it was limited to the summons with intelligence above 100, there was no limit for quantities. For each summons, he needed 200 intelligence points for comradeship. So with 1,200 points, he can control 6 summons. He now understood that this was the reason why they had to keep increasing intelligence. After thinking a moment, he decided to see the new D-rank animals. He had 1,000 D-rank magic stones, so he could use them however he wanted. When he summoned them, there were even fish included in them. Apart from Jagabata, their intelligence was all above 100. That means he could control them from a distance using comradeship. But he was quite sad because he couldn't give orders from a distance to Tama. But now they had a team like Hook already. He then noticed something else. He just needed to use summons to hunt beasts. There was an armored ant over there, and he ordered Spider to shoot and Silk. The spider followed his orders, and then it was the bear's turn to come and beat it. It wasn't overwhelming, but only a few summons could defeat an armored ant already. He was proud of his summon team. Hiro and Hook were in charge of reconnaissance, and with Harami's ability, the team's ability to dodge attacks greatly increased. It was not possible to add more troops to the battle.